Well, I don't know about finding all of them, Taylor. You did a pretty good job this morning of finding them. I've just come to the same places and, well, gotten lucky. So we eventually found where the sticks are lying. They were, as you can see, very camouflaged in this long grass. So I was kind of just doing loops around from the western side of Twin Dams where the elephants chased them, and eventually found them all curled up in the long grass. And you can see, if you were anywhere near a road and you drove past here, there is not a chance that you would ever see these lions. That is the coloration of the grass and the color of them, and when they're lying flat, you don't see anything. Now, there are 3 adult females here, and yet you do not see even one of them. You can just see the cubs that are out and about, and they are kind of lying all in a big ball at this stage. And as soon as it gets a bit cooler, I would imagine they will start waking up, and hopefully we'll go back down towards Twin Dams for a little drink. It's been a hot day, and generally with lions you'll find that that's what happens, is when they get quite warm, they'll decide to start moving and getting back down towards where there's a bit of water to rehydrate. There's a little one busy catching flies. Hey, little one. Now, I believe a lot of you are excited to see the sticks. It is very exciting that they've been coming onto Djuma. And I remember when I used to work at Chitwa that the sticks was a fairly regular occurrence on Djuma. They used to cross a lot at Twin Dams, Baboon Pan. They used to go all the way along the southern side. And I remember they used to even go right up towards Gari Dam. I often used to hear of them up that way, particularly when the Matimbas came in. So it's been a surprise that they haven't actually spent much time on Djuma, and it's probably because of these little guys. They've all been kind of born over the last few months, and much like the Nkumas last year spent such a large portion of their time on Djuma, not moving too much. It's the same with the sticks. They were around the south of us, and they then have now moved north now that the cubs are getting bigger. Now, Angela, you say it's good to see that the cubs are getting bigger. I know it is very good, and they're looking actually healthy. I haven't seen the Styx cubs in quite a while, but they're all looking pretty good. I mean, they're a little bit on the, probably on the skinny side, but that's given. They're getting to that age where they do look a little bit skinny from time to time, but they're still as cute as ever. Look at those little eyes. Hello, you. The last time I saw you, you were a tiny little baby. I can't believe how much they've grown. They're probably 3 times the size of the last time I saw them, and the last time I saw them was actually before the TV shows in for Mother's Day, so that would have been end of April, beginning of May was the last time I actually saw these sticks. And so these little cubs are no longer so little. They are actually getting much bigger, and they are looking fantastic, actually. I'm very surprised. I know somebody told me the other day that they were saying that this has got signs of mange, and they don't have it too bad. If I compare what the other Styx cubs looked like last year when their mange really hit this pride hard, they don't look too bad at all. There's a few little patches here and there, but nothing major, nothing like last year, and it's just very similar to what some of the Nkuma cubs look like, and these guys will be absolutely fine. And once we get back into the rainy periods in the summer, so that mite will start to die off a bit more, and these guys are much older than the Styx cubs that got it last year, and so I would imagine they will be just fine and will be able to survive. But you bunch are a cutie. Look at them, they're all grooming themselves, and I hope this is going to be a sign that they're going to start waking up and maybe move down towards the open. So, Deborah, you're asking how many cubs the Styx have, and I'm actually, so I was thinking about it this morning, and I know for sure that they have 2 older ones and 4 younger ones, and then there was reports that there was a new set of cubs, which I have not seen, and I haven't heard anything more about them in the last few weeks. It was probably about a month ago that there was a report that there was more cubs and there was new cubs seen, but to be honest, I haven't seen them, and I really have no idea where they could be or if they are still alive. So I'm not sure. As far as I know, there are 6, but it could be that there might be more new ones that have arrived in recent times and have been born. I also don't know how many of the females are here currently. I'm not sure this morning how many Taylor saw, but there should be 3 adult females in total within the Styx grouping. Now, I believe Taylor McCurdy has found something that is probably one of my favorite things to see, just from an entertainment point of view. So let's quickly go across to her before they get out of the water and stop with the fun. Well, they are already awake. They heard this giggling blonde coming down the road, and all the cubs popped their head up and were wondering what was going on as Taylor came past us. So she didn't even see us. We were just north of her, and we were watching her come past. It was funny because we could hear her from far, and then the sound got louder and louder as she was laughing down the road. It was very funny. But these lots, you can see there's a bit of scratching, a bit of grooming going on, and this is quite typical of cubs. They have, when they have a little bit of mange, they will scratch a bit, and you'll find that they will groom each other. But they are starting to wake up, and they've been very cute. There's been grabbing of ears and tails and rolling on top of one another, and you can see it's all kind of a big lion pile at this stage. And there's only one adult lioness that I can see. I don't see any of the others. Maybe the rest are lying somewhere in this deep grass, but so far it's just one. I'm not sure this morning how many Taylor had, but it's only one that I can see at the moment. But look at that. It's just a bundle of joy. Look at that. Now that's what you would call not surround sound, but surround car wash. Oh, paw in the face. Look at the size of those paws already for such a small cat. Now, the mange we're talking about is those little patches that you see there, and it's not something to worry about just yet. Like I say, the Styx Pride, when they were around this age, the little cubs looked a bit like this. It does happen when they're a bit smaller, but they're already old enough that I think they'll be okay. The older cubs look much better. You can see there's one of the older ones. So Andy, you're asking how do the lions get rid of mange? Well, they never get completely rid of it. That mite is naturally occurring. In fact, even us as humans have some of those mites that do live in our hair sometimes. So it's a naturally occurring thing, and they will all have a little bit of it. But it's when the mite gets out of control, and that's normally in the dry conditions. So in the winter times, you see it presenting quite often, and you get these outbreaks of it. As soon as there's a bit more moisture coming along and their immune system gets a little stronger and they groom themselves and they stop rubbing up on one another as much as what they're doing now, you'll find that that will all start to go away and it will start to get better. And that's why the older they get, generally the better it gets quicker, because they no longer lie in piles like that and always kind of on top of one another, and that then stops this mite from spreading too much from one to the other, and they just groom it out and it eventually then goes away. So they'll be okay. Like I say, they're much better off than what I've seen the Styx cubs last year, and even the Styx cubs were looking a little bit like this at the end of the drought last year, and that's cleared up enough now, and the Styx cubs, the Styx cubs look just fine. So you'll find with the Styx, much will be the same. You can see, look at Mom, she's almost completely healed. They had it quite badly as well, and she's much better off, so I would imagine the cubs will get there eventually. Oh, Mom's tail is now time for a game. And this is what happens when the kids start waking up. It's now time to pull tails and to play and to chase one another around. And look, you can see they get a bit angry with each other from time to time. There we go. And all this play will be vitally important for later in life when they are tackling bigger animals. All the kind of techniques that they've practiced by being cubs and playing around with one another will become very important later. They'll have the sort of way to grab another cub. They'll be able to use those paws and those mouths to be able to effectively bring down the prey that they need, so, or to defend themselves should they get in a situation where they are being attacked by another lion. Yes, hello you. Now this little one closest to us looks like a young male. He's already, see, he's getting a little bit of a mohawk going on the back of his head there, so I think he's a young male. I thought I saw little testes when he was on his back. I can't remember now clearly, but it looked like he might have been a young male. And it seems with the Styx that they do produce a lot of males. In the time that I've known the Styx, a lot of the cubs have been predominantly males. And I remember all the cubs last year that unfortunately died of the mange. Of the 8 cubs, 6 of them were males. So it's just the 2 females out of the 8. And they then all passed away. But prior to that, it's been a lot of male cubs, and that's why the Styx Pride has shrunk over time. There's been no females really coming through the ranks and surviving to allow the pride to grow, and it's getting to the point where it's getting a little desperate. Hopefully these cubs will survive and that there are some females in it, and the Styx Pride will continue, because it's one of the oldest prides in the Sabi Sands in terms of what we know, and prides that were followed and monitored from early on. They were one of the first prides that were really kind of put on the map of the Sabi Sands. So it would be a real big shame if the pride itself disappeared and was no longer. So I'm really rooting for these cubs, and they've done so well to get to the age that they are, and hopefully the Birmingham boys will continue to stay alive and to protect this area and allow for these guys to get into a mature age, that some of the females will then be able to start breeding, and the Styx Pride will continue. So, Nisha, you want to know what age the lion cub stops suckling milk? Well, some of them are a little cheeky and will try and suckle for as long as possible, but generally they should stop suckling at around 8 months, although I have seen a male lion that was almost 2 years trying to suckle from a mother that had her new cubs, so it does happen sometimes, but generally around 8 months they are completely weaned and on meat. So these guys will already be eating meat, but they won't be completely weaned. The smaller ones, the bigger ones for sure, they are going to be off milk now and will no longer be suckling. But it's so nice that they're actually awake, because often you get to lions and they're fast asleep, particularly on a hot day like today, and after being chased by ellies, I'm sure they were a little bit on the sleepy side after being interrupted on their nap. So nice to see all the cubs up and moving and playing, and look at those eyes, are they not yes, beautiful? You can see the big black tufts on the back of the ears. I always think that a lion's eyes are, or cats in general, even the leopards, when they look at you, it's almost as though they can tell exactly what you're thinking, and they almost analyze you, and as though, are you something that I can trust in, that they be able to sort of work out exactly who you are. It's probably not anything like that, but it just feels that way. They seem to be able to bore into the deepest part of your skull when they stare at you. Now, one of them, probably the female, given the size of her belly, seems to have decided to pass some gas, which is quite common after eating. So if they did steal a meal from Asana this morning, like Taylor was telling me, it smells definitely like she's just let go, because it's not exactly a pleasant smell that's wafting downwind right now, and that's generally when they let go of a little bit of gas, and it's often after they've eaten that this happens. It's particularly bad when you sit with a group of males after a buffalo kill. You've got to be very careful about where you park, because otherwise this horrible scent comes and it almost burns your nostrils. It's so bad. It's really very unpleasant, and you will smell it from time to time. So it hopefully means that this female will stop sort of dropping gas, because we are downwind, and hopefully she'll get up and move onto the other side of us, and then we won't have to worry nearly as much. Of course, it could be the cubs too. Oh, look at them. There's one that's on its back, kind of just staring at us. Isn't this cute? They are so cute. When they're in big sort of clumps like this and playing with one another and grooming one another, they are some of the cutest little things in the world. Right, well, we're going to carry on and just enjoy our time with these beautiful lions, because, well, spotlights aren't used on them just yet, so we can still stay with them because of our infrared. And I believe Taylor has got something that is not a snake, but, well, is part of the same sort of genus in the reptilian family. We are indeed, because, well, they're being as playful could be with cubs. Look, there's lots of interaction, especially the 4 young ones. They're biting one another and grooming one another, and there's paws around everybody. And look, you can see everyone's grabbing a part of the other one and pulling. And it's so funny, because they kind of gang up on one, and they bully that one, and then that one decides, no, enough of this, and then they'll gang up on another one. And it's very funny to watch. It's always okay when they're the ones biting, but as soon as they're not, the ones being bitten, and it's not fair anymore. It seems that they're all at least enjoying themselves, and it's so cute to see them at least moving around together and playing and grooming. Look at that. Has it been a long day? It's quite something just watching them. That's why it's the best time to come at this sort of time of the day, because they do get a little bit more on the playful side. Adele, you're asking about the lion prides and whether or not they have much involvement with, well, the lion cubs, should I say, with the big males. Well, it depends on the male. Some males are more tolerant than others. We find with the Birmingham boys, the cubs sort of rub up on them every now and then, but not really. They don't really sort of go towards the big males. Ooh, look at the size of those claws already. You can see those things are lethal already. That's a small cub of only probably now, what are they? They're about 5 months old. And look at the size of those claws already. massive. So you'll find that they don't really go near the male because the male's not really that tolerant of the cubs. It doesn't like all the boisterous nature of them and the way that they move around and they pull at his mane and climb on him. He's not interested in that. And remember that the Birmingham Boys, being a coalition that has a big territory, doesn't spend huge amounts of time with the prides. They kind of come in and out every now and then, and maybe when there's a carcass, but otherwise most of their time is sort of spent away from the pride, and so they don't form that same bond that you'll see the females forming with the cubs. And the cubs will go up to the male, and some males are more tolerant of it and will allow them to rub up on them and climb on them, and the Birmingham Boys seem to be okay, but you'll find sometimes not. I remember the Majingalands, the one with the scar on his nose, he used to get quite grumpy when the cubs used to jump on him. And in fact, he actually killed some cubs the one time that were one of his brothers, or what we thought one of his brothers, that had mated to form those cubs and make those cubs. And he actually killed them. So some males more tolerant than others, but they don't form the same sort of strong bond as they would form with the rest of the pride in terms of the females and siblings that they have within the pride. Now it's time for a stick to be... we go and off we go. Now I believe Taylor has repositioned. She's found herself something feathery, and before it flies away, let's go across to her. This. One of my favourite sounds in the bush is little lion cubs begging for milk. It's very entertaining. Now, what was hugely interesting is that we had the 4 young cubs that were suckling, and then the one at the back there, which is not of this litter, he's slightly bigger, and it looks like a little male, was here and was suckling actually before the 4 came in, and so she was allo suckling that one there. Now it's naughty because he shouldn't really be suckling, he's old enough not to suckle, but he was trying his luck, and then she lost the plot completely, and she stood up and growled and hissed at them and kind of moved, and now she's laid down and she sees that all her cubs are feeding and everything is much better now, so it's all calmed down again. But for a second there was growling and there was squeaking, and look, you can see she's still showing her teeth towards that older cub. You'll hear her sort of grumble every now and then as she just sort of moans and says, "Don't you think about coming and drinking milk?" So even though they will let others suckle from time to time, they generally prefer their own to suckle from them, and they'll make sure that their own get first access to the teats. Isn't this cool? So this is where the other 2 females were lying. We're a little bit further to the east of where we first found them, and it's amazing because we drove right past these 2 females when we were trying to find the rest of the pride, and we bumped into the cubs with that other female long before we ever saw these guys, and we literally drove within about, I would say, 30 meters of these lionesses, but because they're lying down flat and the grass around them is fairly long, it's almost impossible to see them. So I believe a lot of you are talking about how adorable it is to see the little cubs suckling and sort of whinging and squeaking, and it is one of the best things to see. I love when little lion cubs make that noise. It's got to be one of my favourite sounds in the bush, and to watch them sort of interact with their mom and the other lionesses in the pride is always an absolute privilege. And Taylor was saying we're very fortunate to do what we do, and these kind of moments reinforce that. So, you know, Taylor had this morning that leopard and lion saga, and then this afternoon the softer side of lions with the cubs suckling. So, very lucky indeed. You'll find now that they will itch a little bit around their elbows, so that's all just scratching around where that mange is, but you can see how much better the older cub looks than the younger cub. It's got a bit of sort of patches of mange, but it's not as bad, not nearly as bad as what you see on the younger one. So as they get older, they'll start to grow out of it a little bit. And I remember actually seeing these older cubs a while ago, and it was far worse than what we're actually seeing now. So eventually you'll get out of it. And he's going to be a stocky young fella. If it is a boy, can't see nicely. Oh, off it goes. It's now running back to its mom, I think, because the other older cub is up at the top there where the other female is. And just watch how this lion disappears. The colour is perfect, but what you will see is the black tip to the tail and the black ears, and that's why they have them, is so that they can see one another when walking through thickets like this. It black contrasts so well against this light coloured grass. It's absolutely perfect. Everything's settling down a little bit. And the cubs have all got their teat to feed on, and that's the nice thing when you're just 4 of you, is that there are 4 teats, and so each one can find a place to suckle. Except if you're at the bottom, it does get a bit uncomfortable because everybody else squashes you. So it's a bit of a bun fight, particularly now when they get a lot larger like this. It becomes much harder for them all to fit there. And you'll find if they start sort of squabbling with one another, that will trigger mom to get a little bit upset, and she'll then sort of growl at them and maybe even stand up and move out the way and stop them from suckling. Now, I was looking at the third female, which is the one lying to our right here, who theoretically should be the one that has new cubs, and I can't see any sort of suckle marks at the moment. I'm waiting for her to try and roll back towards me again so I can get a definite look, but I don't see too many suckle marks there either. So, Nigel from the UK, you say all they need now is a big screen TV to complete a lazy Sunday afternoon. Well, indeed, Nigel, it would be the perfect way for the Lions to kind of take it easy. And I wonder what they would watch. Maybe they'd watch something about buffalo, and they could then see techniques on hunting buffalo. Maybe that's a new TV series for the Lions, or Life Within the Pride. And I wonder if they would watch trashy reality TV, or if they would watch the documentaries. It would be interesting to know. Wonder what you guys all think. Hashtag Safari Live. What do you think Lions would watch on a Sunday night? Should they have a big screen TV, and we're just taking it very easy for a Sunday night movie or series? So, Megs reckons that they would be watching Keeping Up with the Nkuhuma Pride. Well, hopefully the Nkuhuma Pride is not as sort of drama-filled as what other TV shows with the similar sort of title would be. But yes, Megs, I reckon that would be good. Hopefully the Nkuhuma Pride would be around enough for the TV series to air and for it to be shown, because they seem to be elusive of late, so we certainly wouldn't have been able to give too many updates to that program. But hopefully they will come back soon and we'll see them, or the Styx will start spending more time here. It would be quite something if the Styx did spend more time in this area. I reckon they would also be a fan, the females would be a fan of how to raise children. I think that would be another one that they would use. Now you see that little cub, look how it just popped its head up. So it's probably heard the others up at the top there, and it's now going to go back and investigate what's happening up there, what is it missing out on, that the older siblings are up to the top there, and what the female up there is doing. So you'll find they move around quite a bit, and the others won't be too sad about that because it opens up a spot for them to feed. Now it's torn between which way to go. Nope, going to carry on up the hill. So Steph, you're asking what would happen if a male lion comes around. Well, it depends on which male lion we're talking about. If it is an unknown random male lion, well, that male lion is in for an absolute hiding. He's going to have a situation where he's going to get these 3 females coming at him at full speed to protect these cubs. They're going to try and defend the cubs as much as possible, get between him and the cubs, and make sure that the cubs get time to run away and they can then keep the cubs safe. If it's one of the Birminghams, they might sort of get up and look for a while, and once they recognize who it is, there might be a little bit of growling and hissing, but once they realize it's a Birmingham male, they'll then calm down. They know that those males are the dominant males for this area, and in all likelihood of the fathers for these cubs, because the Styx really have only mated with them, and then you'd find the male would probably just plunk down and not really do too much. So it just depends on which male had to arrive here as to what would happen. Now it's getting quite dark, so I think what we're going to do is probably start thinking about switching into IR. Like I was saying, these cubs are too young for us to spotlight, and this is the best part about the IR. Rather than us leaving them, we can just turn off all our lights and sit completely in the darkness with them, and we won't have to worry about too much at all. Sorry? So Craig's going to go onto IR now. He's just telling me that he's going to do so. So we'll just keep the IR open, and I don't even have to worry about interfering with these cubs in any way. The reason why we don't spotlight them is twofold. One, their eyes haven't developed very well yet, and 2 is a spotlight in the bush is often an attractant to other predators. You'll find hyenas in particular have learned that spotlights in the thickets at night in particular generally means a predator, and they'll actually come and investigate spotlights. So if we have all our lights off, then generally the hyenas are not too worried about it, and they'll actually leave us alone, and they won't come in here and affect the cubs in any way. Now they've all had a good feed and off back to go and play, I think. The 2 females here are just completely down. Now, if you look on her tummy, she's just lifted her leg. And if you look carefully there, see how her hair... Oh, no, don't close your leg now. I wanted to show you just how the hair around her teats is completely missing. It's almost balded there from the rough tongues of these cubs as they've suckled. And it's always an indication that a female has cubs. And so when we were talking about the Agama Pride and that cub that they were with the one time, and we were saying that they don't have any suckle marks, it's very evident when a female has cubs. That fur around those teats goes completely bald, always very matted from where they would have suckled. If you compare the two lionesses, now hopefully the other one will come over, you can see here she does actually have marks where cubs have suckled, but it doesn't look like any time recently. So the hair is starting to grow back now. You can see there it was at some point quite bald, and now the hair is starting to grow back. It's a little bit shorter on those back teats than the top teats, and there's no actual swelling around the teat that would tend to suggest that there is milk. If the mother stands up or rolls like that at some point, we'll see a very different look to her stomach. It'll be completely bald and it'll be matted and almost circular around, if the hair is there, almost circular around those teats. That would tend to then suggest that she's still nursing and suckling. So if this female did have cubs, I don't think they are still around, because it doesn't look like she's producing any milk at the moment. Her tummy is big and fat, but that's not from milk, that's from feeding off something. And I wonder what Hosanna had this morning that these guys stole, because whatever it was, it's quite substantial, because all three females tend to have quite big bellies, and the cubs are not exactly thin either. And so it must have been something fairly large, maybe an impala female or impala male. That would have definitely filled the bellies as much as what we're seeing now. But there's some yawning going on, so I think it's almost time for these guys to wake up. So it would be really nice if they get up and move and go down towards Twin Dams again, and we get them all lined up along the bank drinking together. We've been waiting a long time to see an image like that, and hopefully we'll be able to show you all tonight. But there's definitely some sort of stirring with these lionesses at the moment. I was just telling Craig though, my favourite thing is when these lionesses lie like this, often you'll find their front paw goes onto their chest and they actually scratch themselves with that front paw. It always makes me laugh. Exquisite bliss, they do get irritated from suckling. You'll find sometimes the females are not in the mood at all, especially when it's a hot sort of part of the day and late in the mornings, and all these cubs come bounding up and climbing all over their mother and trying to kind of get there, and they fight with one another, and sometimes in their overzealousness of trying to feed, they'll actually bite down too hard on the nipple and it'll hurt them, and then you'll find the females growl and hiss and actually stand up and move away and walk away and are not interested in these sort of cubs at all. So you'll find a case that it does get a bit much after a while. Now you know it's awesome when you can hear the scratching. I'm just keeping quiet so you can actually hear her scratching. Look how gentle she is around the eye. Now you know you're close when you get to see that. That is so cool. Now Stacey, you're asking if the milk will stop, her production of milk will stop. After a set period of time. Well, yes, that's exactly what happens. So as the cubs start getting weaned, the female knows that those cubs are getting bigger, and she'll start slowing down on production of milk, and then she'll eventually dry up completely and there'll be no milk produced at all. This is so cool. Well, David, you're wondering if the cubs get water from the milk. Well, David, there is an element of water within milk that helps to hydrate the cubs, most definitely, but these cubs will drink water. You'll find if they do go down to Twin Dams, they will all line up and probably drink, the cubs included, but there is an hydration content in that milk. Remember, when these cubs are born, they are completely brined. they are not able to really move for themselves, and so they have to be able to get water from the milk itself to be able to survive. So there is a water component to milk, and that definitely means that they can hydrate from it. Interestingly enough, when cats show mange like this, you're going to find that they're going to drink actually more than they would have had they not had the mange. And the reason for that is that the mange causes dehydration, and so they then go to water a lot more often to then kind of counteract that. But yes, they will get moisture content from the milk itself. Are you doing your Sunday yoga? Tell you what, she's a lot more flexible than many others in this world. And I wonder if this is now time to start going. Imagine if she goes, this other female will also get up and start moving in that direction. What you do find with lions is they often do this, is they'll get up and then the rest of the pride goes and there'll be a bit of a greeting going on. Now you can see she's yawning, which is a typical sign that she might stand up. She's getting air into the body, just getting that lactic acid moving from lying down all day, filling the lungs with air, and then she'll stand up and start going back towards where that other female is. Also, what they do is when they wake up at this time, they all kind of separate out and they'll actually go and have a little bit of a sort of toilet time, and they go away from one another and they'll have a bit of a pee, and then they will go and maybe defecate as well and then rejoin. I'm sure she's going to get up any time now. She's starting to yawn, and that's normally an indication that she's going to go. Now the thing is, I'm waiting for her to go, because the reason why is this pathway going straight up here that the lions have all used is the easiest way to get there. If I have to now go back to them, I have to do a big loop round all the way to the big trees in the background there, so it's really a long way away. So I'm going to hope that this female does get up and move towards where the cubs are, because it will make my life much easier, and hopefully we'll then get a greeting of them all together and the whole pride, and then they stand up and start to walk. Wouldn't it be fantastic if they do get up and they just start pushing further north and we end up seeing these lions tomorrow morning deeper inside Djuma? It would be a really good way to sort of spend our evening, and to know that the lions are going to spend more time here. The problem with the Styx is that they do move a lot. Last night they were seen on Chitwa crossing in from the Mulawanini into Torchwood, and then during the night they moved all the way to this side and then lay down here. So the chances of them being this side tomorrow morning is probably not great, but, well, one can hope. Now she's still just grooming herself, which is also typical of a lioness. When before she moves, is yawning, grooming. That's all signs that she is starting to think about getting going. But she's definitely also dropping bombs while she's sitting here, because there's a nice putrid meat smell that's coming my way. Craig, can you smell it? Is it pleasant? No. No. Is it making you hungry, Craig? No. Craig's kind of got this face as though this is not the most pleasant thing that he's ever smelt in the world. So let's see now if she's going to get up. I think she will shortly. You can actually see where she's grooming it. You see these little lines on her leg as the rough tongue sort of combs the hair in a different direction. Now I'm going to stay with them, like I said, and we'll just see what happens and where they go, because we don't have that much longer left of the drive, and it's a very pleasant way to end the day in this beautiful dusk period. And somebody else that is enjoying the dusk, not too far from where I am, is the ever-present Miss McCurdy, and so let's go across to her and see what she's got to say about the day coming to an end. Well, they've laid down again. The third lioness hasn't joined just yet. They're all kind of spread out at the moment in the long grass. Some of the cubs are awake. You can see there's one lioness right next to us, and then the other lioness in the background. You can just see the tip of her ears poking out over that side. Now there was something that alerted all of them, because they were sitting and their heads were, most of them were down, and all of a sudden they just popped their heads up. So I don't know if maybe one of the males called from north of us. We know Nena was crossed from Buffelshoek Dam, and there was another male at Jordan's Dam in Buffelshoek, so maybe one of them roared. I couldn't hear anything, but the lions definitely were very aware of something and all sort of perked up and faced straight north, and now are starting to go back to sleep again. I think what's going to happen is that they're only going to get moving just now. I thought they would, but unfortunately not. Alicia, you're asking if I feel nervous about being so close? No, not at all. These lionesses, as you can see, are not perturbed by us in any way whatsoever. They really don't worry about us at all. You can see they're just on my right-hand side at the moment, and even without the door, I don't really stress about it too much. They don't know us as something that they want to eat, and ultimately, if I'm not aggressive with them and I just park a reasonable distance away and they move towards us, it's not really too much of an issue, and you'll find that they don't have any aggressive tendencies towards us. The only time they get aggressive is if you're either too close and you kind of push them, or if you get too close to cubs or their carcass, then they can sometimes get a little bit on the nasty side. But for the most part, if you're respectful of them, then they generally don't worry about you at all. I've actually had a situation once where I had a lioness come up and a young male lion, and they actually put their heads inside the footwell of the vehicle without a door. It wasn't while I was with Safari Live, but it was right in the beginning of my guiding career, and they were sniffing around at my feet, which was a interesting situation and one that was quite something. And it was part of the now Mangen Pride. That's those females there, and there was a young male hanging around with them. I can't remember who it was actually. I think it might have been the Styx young male, and they sort of took a liking to our shoes, particularly the trackers. They used to go to the tracker shoes and sniff at them and try and actually pull on the tracker's feet sometimes, but they grew out of it fairly quickly. We had to sort of, every time they tried it, we had to start the car. But I tell you what, when you've got a big wet nose mark on your shoe, it's not very pleasant at all, and that's a little bit nerve-wracking. But luckily for us, that hardly ever happens. And like I said, when they started doing that, we then just started to start the car every time they came close, and nowadays those females won't do that at all. So it's just about being respectful and giving them their space when they need it, and also at the same time, much like the elephants, just making them aware that them touching us and climbing on us is not acceptable either. But you can see that lioness is in no way perturbed by the fact that we are sitting 4 or 5 meters from her. She's fast asleep at the moment, eyes are closed. And I reckon because it's been quite a warm evening, they're going to rest until well after dark, and then they'll get up and start moving. Also remember, these lionesses had food this morning, so they're not on a drive to find food. Ooh, Michael, you're asking if I have a favorite memory of the Styx Pride. That's a tough one, because there's quite a few different sort of scenarios that I've had with the Styx Pride. I think probably one of the most insane sightings I ever had was with the Styx, but it was way back when I first arrived at Chitwa, when the Styx male that unfortunately eventually passed away due to that broken leg that he had, or dislocated hip, and he sort of unfortunately just wasted away. But that pride at that stage, they had broken off, and it was this young male with 3 of the females. And we were driving one morning, and it had been a quiet couple of days, and we hadn't seen too many of the lions, and we came down the road, and there was 3 buffalo that were not looking very happy at all. And as we kind of got close to the buffalo, out came the Styx Pride, well, these 3 lions and this male, and they tackled one of these tiny baby buffalo to the ground, and then ensued this massive battle between these buffalo and these lions. And the buffalo would run in and run back as the lions chased them, and then the lions would go and grab this little baby. And it was probably one of the most traumatic sightings I've ever had in my life. It was not one that I really would actually want to relive, but it's one that sticks in the memory banks, and in terms of memorable, that would be it. But basically what happened was this poor little calf was so delicate that the lions, once they pulled it down, the mother was so enraged and trying to defend this baby and trying to keep it alive, she kept running over the baby, and she eventually broke its spine by running over it, and this poor baby couldn't use its back legs, and the lions kept running and grabbing and trying to pull at this baby, and they were actually maiming it and doing all kinds of horrible things. And the more this mother tried, the more this poor baby got maimed. And it was really one of those sightings that you kind of wish you weren't there, but at the same time it is nature, and it is something that takes place. Eventually the young male lion from the Styx, who was at that stage about 3 years old, managed to grab this buffalo and grab it, and basically it actually just pulled it in half by using its claws, and it just pulled like this, and the buffalo then died. And it was really quite something to watch. But it was just memorable from the standpoint of the Styx determination to get that buffalo, and the buffalo's determination to try and protect their young was absolutely amazing. And the fact that that female was almost ready to pay the ultimate sacrifice of being hunted herself and being killed herself just to defend her young one, and that interaction between the Styx was really quite something. So that's one of the sightings I've had. There's been many others. I've seen the Styx kill impalas before, other buffalo, so I've been very fortunate to have spent a lot of time with the Styx. And I remember actually the one day as well, we had really had a tough time of it when it came to lions, and we had had really not seen lions for about 3 weeks, and we were struggling, and we were following Lamula and Moya, who were mating, and they were walking down towards the Mala Mala boundary. And the sun was setting, and it was that kind of ideal moment in time where you would wish to see something happen. And I had just left the leopards, and we thought, well, there's no chance of lions. We've checked the boundary earlier in the day, there was nothing. And as I came down onto the Mala Mala boundary with the sun setting over the Mulawati riverbed and this big massive open area, out of the bushes just came the whole Styx Pride, and 11 of them just walked straight towards us with that setting sun over them. And it was one of those sights that you can never forget as a guide, watching lions walking through sort of white grass with the setting sun, and the fact that we hadn't seen them in so long. It just made that the best sighting ever that I could think of. And I remember all the guides were super excited because we all kind of hadn't seen lions, and everyone rushed there, and we had this amazing sighting with the full moon and everything. So it was really a very special sighting. And so the Styx have been giving me many sightings over the years. I'll try to think of some more. I've been very fortunate, like I say, to spend time with them. Now, while I reminisce and think about these things and what else has gone on, let's go back across to Taylor and see if maybe that little leopard that she was seeing in the distance has popped out and the vehicles have gone away, and let's see how it's going. We're going to leave them, but we thought, isn't it a good way just to finish off and cap off a rather good week with cats, considering they've been in and out and frustrating, but we've really had at least some great sightings of all of the cats. There's been Birmingham boys this week, there's been the Nkahuma Pride, the Styx, most of our leopard favourites as well, so it hasn't been all that bad. Exquisite Bliss and lots of the other viewers are wondering what insect is making the noise around me. Well, most of these are being made by armoured ground crickets and varying other types of beetle and cricket species, but the loudest one is an armoured ground cricket that we're hearing at the moment, so you do hear them quite regularly. It's not the cicadas. The cicadas tend to come out more in the summer months when it rains, so these will be different species of crickets mostly that we're hearing at the moment. There are also ground crickets calling, and basically how that works is it's called stridulating, so they're just rubbing their legs against their exoskeleton. There's a resonating organ that sits on their exoskeleton, and as they rub that little membrane, it acts much like what a drum would act. So you tap a drum and it produces the sound, and that's what that is that you're hearing there. So that's how they produce such an incredible sound. And isn't it amazing, a little insect like that can create such a noise. You can see our lionesses are still very stationary, and like I said, after a meal this morning, they're not going to go hunting. The only chance we had of them moving was to go and find water, which maybe they already did today, and when the elephants chased them, they've decided just to have a bit of a rest now. And I would imagine this evening they probably in all likelihood are going to get up and move, and hopefully it's not southwards but rather northwards, and tomorrow morning we'll be able to find them, because it would be nice to have the Styx for a few weeks in this area. And it's actually quite nice when the crickets stop a little bit, because it is quite a high-pitched sound when it's right next to your ear. But it's that time of the day, unfortunately, where things are going to wrap up and we need to finish our drive for the evening and for the week. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Like I said, this whole week we've had great sightings. There's been some frustrating days with tracks going in other places, but we really have been lucky in that we've seen most of the leopards and lions that we see in this area, and so we've been very spoilt, and nice to see the Ellies returning back to Djuma this afternoon. There was at least 2 or 3 seen. So from myself, Taylor, Craig, Sebastian, James, we'll see you